Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. I hope you're having a fantastic day. As promised, this video is 10 advanced tips for Armored Core 6. Please bear in mind that these advanced tips will assume some knowledge of the game already. For a great video to get you started, make sure you check out my beginner's guide first, which is pinned below. These tips will assume that you've gone through Chapter 1 and you're fairly familiar with the core mechanics and you've unlocked a few additional options for your AC. So without further ado, let's get straight into tip number 1. Going in the complete opposite direction from the first video, now that you're more experienced and you've got more weapons available, you can most certainly go for weapon swapping. In fact, there are a few very powerful ways with which to use weapon swapping. The first example you're seeing here is a double melee weapon build. Especially later on in the game when you've got something like the lance, a fully charged assault boost lance will stagger most enemies in one hit. Then you can very quickly switch out to something crazy powerful like the pile bunker and just do an insane amount of damage whilst using zero ammunition. This is quite a risky way to use weapon swapping and doesn't work for all enemies. However, with weapon swapping unlocked, you have so many options available at your fingertips. Another fantastic option you see here is by using an assault rifle and a plasma gun. Some enemies and quite a few bosses do have shields, and these shields will replenish periodically. Therefore, having a plasma gun on hand is a great way to deal with them. And having another light weapon like the Ludlow that you can quickly switch out to when the plasma gun has overheated is an absolutely fantastic light load alternative to some of the heavier shoulder weapons that you were using previously. This way, even though its damage is light, you can keep the pressure on your enemies and keep the stagger meter built up whilst your other weapons are reloading. These are just two of the amazing ways you can use weapon swapping to your advantage later on in the game. So with that, let's move into tip number 2. As you probably already know by now, some missions have a choice with who you side with. So make sure you listen to the briefings before accepting, because when you pick one decision mission, you then lock yourself out of the other one until your next new game. The reason I bring this up as an advanced tip is because if you didn't know, this becomes extremely crucial in New Game Plus 1 and especially in New Game Plus 2, where you finally unlock the ability to complete the third and final hidden ending. Make sure you pick decision missions wisely, and where possible, always try and choose missions you haven't done before, because this will be your best opportunity to unlock new, extremely powerful parts for your AC, and more importantly, juicy secrets and endings. Also, if you would like for me to actually do a series covering all of the options and how to unlock some of the secret weapons and endings, please just let me know in the comments and I shall make it happen. Next up for tip number 3, talking of secrets, make sure you search everywhere for hidden combat logs and various text files. Every combat log you acquire will help to progress your log hunt rank, and especially as you get higher up the ranks, you will unlock some amazing equipment and parts that you can't get any other way. I have been documenting where to get every single combat log, and there's only a couple left that I'm missing that I'm hopefully going to be wrapping up in the next day or so, live over on Twitch, so come and watch us find them secrets if you want. But whilst I'm on the topic, if you would like me again to turn that into a full series of where to get all the hidden combat logs, let me know and I'll make it so. Tip number 4 is the second and final tip that will vary massively from the beginner's tips. And this is exactly how effective Assault Boost can be when used correctly. I advised against using this in combat during the beginner's tips because if you are new to the series, trying to implement this along with all of the other new mechanics that are going to be unfamiliar to you is just going to become far too much to handle. But now that you're more familiar with the game, let's talk about how to use Assault Boost correctly and exactly what it can do for you when you do. Firstly, there is an amazing OS chip upgrade you can unlock, and you should do that as soon as you can, called Boost Kick. This is a great way to stagger enemies without using any ammunition, and in most cases can actually be a replacement for a melee weapon, freeing you up to bring even more guns along to the missions with you. And to use the Boost Kick, you need to be assault boosting. When you are assault boosting towards an enemy, just push down L3 and you will charge into them. This won't do a crazy amount of damage, but it will do a load of stagger damage, and is a fantastic way to keep up the pressure when your other guns are on cooldown. Also, whilst assault boosting, you both deal more stagger damage and receive less stagger damage. Therefore, boosting towards an enemy whilst firing can let you close the distance whilst also winning a favourable trade. You can even quick boost and repair whilst assault boosting, though it can take a while to get used to, especially whilst in close quarters, because you do go very, very fast. So if you need to come to an abrupt stop, tap the jump button rather than pressing down on your analog stick. Pressing down on the analog stick will stall you for a moment, however, just tapping jump will preserve your momentum and leave you less vulnerable. And finally, the other amazing thing about assault boosting is I've heard people referring to it as ass boost, and that just makes me happy. Tip number 5 is twofold. We are going to start off by talking about the variety and versatility of builds you really want to use in this game, but I'm also going to give you one very solid weapon that you can use in 99% of situations. Firstly, as covered in the first video, you can sell parts for full price, and this is entirely intentional by the developers because so many situations require such varied builds. There has been a lot of debate on the internet as of late in regards to the difficulty of Armored Core, and newcomers to the series putting the game down and not really giving it a chance because they feel like it's just too hard. And yes, admittedly, it is a very tough game. I'm not here to be elitist, I'm not here to put anyone down, it really is a tough game. But it is far less tough than people are making it for themselves, if that makes any kind of sense. Because what I've seen is people are finding one particular build that works really, really well for them, and they are sticking with that and then trying to brute force through the later missions. So the primary purpose of tip number 5 is to please not forget that you can and should change your build very frequently and try new things. There is literally no downside to it, and it is the entire purpose of why the developers made it this way. That being said, as soon as you unlock the songbirds after you finish chapter 1, go and buy at least one of them and use them for most of your playthrough. The songbirds are just god tier in so many situations, and I used them to beat every single one of the final bosses. Now, if you're watching an advanced tips video, you've probably gotten to the point where you're looking at replaying missions and you're wanting to get them sweet, juicy S ranks. For this, the biggest few tips I can give you is that speed is the most important factor. If there are high value targets in a particular mission, such as a Baus tetrapod, a heavy MT or an LC, obviously make sure you go and take them down as quickly and efficiently as possible, because them extra points are going to ramp up your rank. Of course, if you're taking loads of damage and you're using way too much ammo, you might still only get an A rank, but speed is definitely the most important factor. However, if you are just replaying missions for the highest pay so that you can buy a few more parts, then obviously take your time with the mission. Speed does not matter and just favor taking less damage and using less ammo. This next tip is very simple but so effective, and it is to make sure you use your expansion core just as you are about to stagger. There is definitely merit to using your expansion core right at the start of a fight, and another fantastic time to use your expansion core is if you know an enemy is just about to go into phase 2 and do a really powerful attack. But for the most part, especially in one-on-one AC versus AC fights, you want to use your expansion core just before you stagger, because it will completely reset it, and as soon as your shield is gone, you will be back to 0 ACS again. And using this method and timing this well effectively gives you 2 full stagger bars before you are staggered. I've put tip number 8 in advanced tips because even though it's a very simple thing, it might not be something many people know about, and it can really help you when trying to min-max a new build. The long and short of it is to make sure you play videos when buying new weapons from the shop. Reading the item descriptions on some of these weapons can only get you so far. Only when you take them into battle can you really figure out exactly how they work and how they fit with your build. And I know we've said a few times that you can sell parts for full price, so you can definitely do that. but it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of effort if you just quickly watch the videos in the shop first. Though it's not going to give you the true experience of when you're out on the battlefield, it is at least going to show you how the gun fires so that you know whether it's worth spending that time to go and test it out. Specifically, what this really helped me for is some of these slower charging weapons. You see there's one charging weapon here that has a 2-phase charge on it, and the second phase is so insanely slow. That must take a good like 8 seconds to fully charge. And even though it is very clearly one of the most powerful and one of the most badass moves in the entire game, when are you realistically going to be able to sit there and charge your weapon for a full 8 seconds? And yes, I know, before you moan at me in the comments, I know you can still fly around and move whilst you're charging, but unless you have played this game for 1,000 hours and you're super confident and comfortable with all of the moves and your whole build, it's very hard to focus on that bar and make sure you're using the charge efficiently and not accidentally releasing too soon and not leaving it held down for 5 seconds too long. So when you've got weapons like this that are very unique and very niche, it's just really nice to watch this video in advance and see what you're getting yourself into before you waste the time and the effort. Tip number 9 is to use shields. And I must admit, this is definitely something I should do more as well. There are 2 very different types of shields in Armored Core 6, and explained as simply as possible, they are basically blocking shields and parrying shields. If you just want to keep your shield out and hold the button down for as long as possible to block a barrage of attacks, you just want to look at the first 2 stats primarily. You don't need to worry about any of the IG stats. However, if you're looking for a parry shield, then IG is exactly what you want. IG stands for Initial Guard, and this is effectively your parry. The initial guard window on the better parry shields is going to be something very, very minor, like 0.3 or 0.2 seconds, but if you time it very well, it will almost entirely nullify all attacks. So they are very, very good when you get really good at the game. However, in most situations, you want to look at the more versatile shields that don't have as good initial guard stats. However, their damage mitigation and ACS reduction for the top 2 stats are going to be good enough that you can just hold the button down to block a barrage of enemy attacks, and then rush in and counterattack once they've run out of ammo and they're reloading. And tip number 10 is to use a combination of lock-on depending on the situation. If you didn't know, when you enable auto lock-on by pressing in R3, your aiming reticle will snap to enemies and it will be very easy for you to keep track of them as your camera will stay focused on them at all times. However, this will also cause a portion of all of your weapon's shots to miss. So I would definitely advise trying to get good at staying locked onto enemies manually. You just want to make sure you keep them in the middle of your screen and keep them inside of your aiming reticle. This way, far more of your attacks are going to hit. That being said, some enemies, particularly mini-bosses, do like to move around very, very fast, especially the LCs that you'll encounter. In these instances, even though some of your attacks will miss, it is probably better to use auto lock-on. So make sure you get familiar with all different types of lock-on in this game so that you can use whichever one fits the situation you're in. I, for one, know I relied far too heavily on auto lock-on, and I'm very much trying to teach myself out of that at the moment. And for the most part, it's really helping. So trust me, it will help you too. Anyway, that's it for my advanced tips for this video. Please let me know what Armored Core 6 content you would like to see next. And if you're not already subscribed, please do so. And if you want to come check us out on Twitch as I'm playing this live, that would be amazing. And hopefully I'll get to see you over there. As for now, all that I have left to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.